place that yogis fear. Now, when most people talk about enlightenment, they tend to reference a place full of light, or a place of complete unity. Okay, fair enough. But in actuality, there is a stage beyond this. Now, on the way up the path of enlightenment, most people report increasing amounts of light, or something that seems like light, after they pass that period of Now, in going up this path of light, many will describe feelings of bliss that eventually dribble away into complete awareness, or a total immersion into their environment, or a complete belonging with other things. Okay, fair enough. As this continues to intensify, you will wind up in a place where you've lost consciousness of your body, and you only have awareness of undifferentiated light. Alright. But where does this light come from? Now, as you know, in the 60 skills curriculum, we tend to describe things in terms of mechanics. We're not terribly concerned with the philosophy. We're more concerned with get there. So, how does this work? Well, on a very basic level, if you're going up the path of enlightenment, what you're doing is you're taking all of these discrete little pieces of reality and you're putting them back together again. Now, techniques like establishing equilibrium and the releasing techniques allow you to essentially get rid of the mental hang-ups, if you will, that result in a kind of attachment that makes this difficult. But ultimately what we're doing is we're taking all these individual pieces of reality, putting them together, and then unifying. The result of which is all of the other things associated with terrestrial start to add up. And the further and further you go up this path, and the more of these things you recombine, you end up generating a large amount of light. So that light of enlightenment, intended, is many ways just the reflection of all of the things in creation off of something that's not creation. And this gets to the topic of today's discussion, or in other words, that place that yogis fear. Now, what is this exactly? To be blunt, this is something that the sages and the saints have argued about quite a bit. Whatever it is seems to be important. Whatever goes on there is likewise impossible to describe, because human beings describe things in terms of their physicality, sensation, energy, emotion, physical constraint, things like this. So, by definition, if you were somehow possible to go to a place beyond this, you'd have a really hard time describing it. But what's this whole thing about yogis and fear? I thought, the whole point of being a yogi is to kind of get beyond that. Ultimately it is, but here's the curious part. When you've projected your consciousness all the way up into this complete, undifferentiated light, it feels almost complete. It feels like you're there, but not quite. Beyond this, you'll perceive this kind of barrier of nothingness. Now, this isn't the void that most people describe. That actually happened much earlier in the process, and we have to get beyond that to this stage. But whatever this thing is that lies beyond that state of complete light, it's a little disturbing. Most people will report encountering an entity, maybe they frame it as their mind, telling them that they're not ready to do the same kind of barrier to skipping to the end. That said, I'm not sure the entity exists. This entity will tell you things like you have too much attention, or you're not physically ready, or you care too much about the phenomenon world, or so on and so on and so on. And these descriptions of how you're not ready will usually be accompanied by some pretty disturbing imagery from your own past. So it's giving you this idea that, quite simply, you can't go there. Now, that said, in reality, I suspect this isn't true. This is kind of the final obstacle for essentially getting over yourself. Because here's the thing. When you go to that next place, when you go to that, whatever it is, the great nothingness, on a certain level, you die. In fact, physically, what I found when I go through this, I'll feel a heaviness in my chest, all of these other signs of something that would be the sign of a heart attack, for example. And my suspicion is that when I do project into this place, my heart stops for a second. Now, I seem to come back, so it doesn't seem to come permanently. But on a certain level, going to that place, beyond this unification of energy, beyond what our senses normally use to describe the world around us, is a lot like dying. And dying, for those of you who haven't had the dubious pleasure of dying and coming back a few times, is pretty disturbing. Your body really doesn't like this. Your mind gets freaked out by it. Your emotions get all kinds of out of sorts. But again, if you're placing your consciousness in a place beyond conventional perception, well, it would kind of be like that. Now, what's interesting about this is when it happens, it seems to be terribly important. Something seems to happen there that changes you when you come back. Because now all of this light that accumulated has gone into the other place, neutralized out. I'm not sure what it is, but and this gets back to a truism that a lot of the sages goes back. The true sages, the true yogis who've gone the distance, all admit that this thing, whatever it is, this final barrier, what lies beyond it, can only be described in the negative. You can't really positively describe it. They'll describe it in terms of it's not this, it's not that, it's not energy, it's not bliss, it's not something else. And that's as clear a description of that as I can give you. Now, for those who've been following the channel for some time now, you'll know that a major part of my effort over the last several years has been decoding the mandala, or the sacred symbol, on the cover of his third book, The Key to the True Flow, based off experiences in our test group apparently none. So, by following the complete curriculum, you can get this one. It's a lot like dying, but somehow we keep coming back. Now, I'll have a description of what this goes on in later videos, but suffice it to say, the state of Keter that gets described in a lot of traditional Hermetic and Jewish Kabbalah sources seems to be pretty damn accurate. So that is, in complete terms, that place that is. So, if you like the topic of